Hey girls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be a list of all the series that I plan on continuing in 2021. So as the end of the year approaches, I've kind of been looking back on all of my reading in 2020 and I've noticed that I started a lot of series. Now, this isn't altogether too unsurprising for me because I am a big fantasy reader, so there tends to be a lot of series on my radar at any given time, but I did start a lot of series in 2020. I finished a lot of series as well, but just the sheer amount of series that I'm in the middle of right now is a lot, so I thought I'd sit down and talk through all of the series that I started and I plan on continuing in 2021, just so I can have one place where I can look back and see all of the series that I'm in the middle of so I can keep track of them, and just to put a couple of series on everyone else's radar as well. So I think I have about 8 or so series on here that I want to talk about, so let's just get started. So the first series that I'm planning on continuing in 2021 is a space opera sci-fi trilogy, and the first book is The First Sister by Lyndon A. Lewis. I read this year and absolutely loved it. I have a feeling this one might be on my best books of 2020 list, so keep an eye out for that video. But I picked this book up on a whim just because honestly it was a little bit of a cover buy for me and I had heard some good things about it. I absolutely loved it. This is such a fun space opera, very light on the sci-fi elements, so I feel like beginners like me to sci-fi can really enjoy this series. It's very Star Warsian in tone. You follow a group of ragtag people on opposite sides and sometimes the same sides of a war that is splitting our solar system in two, in which humanity, after moving most of humanity off of Earth, has kind of split into two different segments. One is very religious, very strict, almost taking everything far back in the past, whereas the other side of humanity has really pushed the boundaries of space and exploration and science, and both of these have really gone off the deep end, where both sides are so rigid in some parts of society and kind of neglecting others that neither of them are actually that utopian, even though both of them claim to be humanity's ideal living conditions. So we are following 3 separate soldiers and people who are deeply entrenched in this war. We follow the titular first sister, Leto, and Hero. All 3 of these characters have grown up in this war, in this conflict, and as this book and as the series is going to progress, it kind of shows that you may not be the good guy, even if you think that you are on the good and righteous side of a war, kind of exploring how that's a little more black and white, and exploring how maybe what is right isn't always easy and sometimes you have to go against the grain to actually get some good done. So I really enjoyed this book. The second book actually comes out in August of next year, so I'll be picking that up. The next series on my list is the Monstress graphic novel series by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda, and this is a high fantasy epic steampunk story that's very dark fantasy, almost like horror fantasy at times, and this follows Micah Halfwolf, and she is a survivor between a huge war between the humans and Arcanics, which are otherworldly type of beings. The war has been finished, everyone's picking up the pieces, but Micah and some of her friends realize that a second war is on the horizon and that there are terrible world-ending consequences if they don't work together to stop these forces. Further complicating things though, Micah has a deadly secret. She actually has a monster living inside of her, so she has to kind of strike the balance between getting to know this monster and keeping control of her own body while learning to fight with the monster and use it to fight for her side instead of the other side. I have read the first 4 volumes of this series already. This is actually the 4th volume that I'm holding up right now. The 5th volume actually came out in October of this year. I just know that I'm not going to have time to get to it before the end of the year, so I would like to continue this one in 2021, and I think they've been coming out pretty much every year. So if they keep that same schedule, there actually should be a 6th volume coming out towards the end of 2021. So I'm definitely picking up the 5th volume next year, hopefully the 6th as well. The next series that I'm planning on continuing in 2021 is the Scapegracers series by Hannah Abigail Clark. This is a contemporary with magical elements to it. It follows a young coven of witches as they navigate high school and all of the trials and tribulations that come with that, plus some more supernatural happenings that are occurring. This is a really funny, cute, but also a little bit dark at times YA series about a group, I believe they are high school seniors, so I'm unsure whether or not as the series continues that they're going to be going to college and kind of exploring that direction or not. But this really gives me like American Horror Story Coven vibes, but also the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina the TV show vibes as well. This is really enjoyable. Like it definitely has like some spooky elements, some horror elements, but not really horror elements, like horrific things, but definitely has like a lighter campy tone throughout. I really enjoyed my time reading this one, and then the second book in this series, The Scratch Daughters, comes out September 14th of next year. So I plan on picking that book up when I get a chance. This book was a really fun Halloween time read, and I anticipate the next installation in the series is going to be as well. And at this point, it doesn't really say anywhere whether or not this is going to be a duology, trilogy, series, what have you. I'm hoping it's going to be like a longer one. This has a very fun TV show vibe where I feel like this series could stretch on for a while and not get boring. So we'll just have to see how many installations this comes out with, but definitely I will be picking up the second book when it comes out next year. The next series that I started and really enjoyed this year was the Scalman series by Naomi Novak. This one I believe is going to be a part of a trilogy just because there are 3 books listed on Goodreads at the moment, and including an untitled 2022 release. So I believe this is a first book in a trilogy. It's a very bizarre dark academia situation where young magic users are kind of thrown into the Scalaman school because that is their best chance of surviving the outside world, because there are lots of monsters that try and eat people with magical abilities. Students are thrown in the school, and while it is the safest place for them, it's not exactly a safe place to be, so they have to learn their magic while learning to survive. It's a very like survivalist sort of place. So it's like a magical school setting, but I hesitate to say that this is like dark academia because there aren't any teachers in the school. The school is almost a character in and of itself, teaching the students and giving them the magical skills that they need to survive. So in the series, we're following our main protagonist, Elle. She is kind of cursed with being really gifted at dark magic, but dark magic turns you into a dark magic user. She does not want to be a dark magic user, so she is actually not the best at magic just because she doesn't want to use the skills that she's good at. So she's fighting against kind of the preconceived notion of what she's supposed to be in terms of magic. This is written very conversationally. It's written in first person, very informal, almost as if Elle is sitting down and just relaying a story to you, as opposed to a more formal third person narrative. I really enjoyed it. It's not for everyone. I definitely think the second half of this book was a lot stronger than the first half. So I'm really excited and really intrigued to see where this series is going to go. Like I mentioned before, this is, I believe, a part of a trilogy, at least right now. The second book comes out July 6th of 2021. The next series that I'm planning on continuing in 2021 is the Teen Titans comic reboot by Cami Garcia, illustrated by Gabriel Piccolo. And I have no idea how long this series is going to be. This is the second installation. The first one was Raven. The second one was Beast Boy. And then the third one is going to be Beast Boy Loves Raven, which comes out February 23rd of next year. Seeing as how we've only been introduced to 2 of the Titans, and then the third one seems like it's just staying with Raven and Beast Boy for now, I don't know how long this iteration is gonna last. I'm here for a long time, because the longer the better, honestly, because I absolutely love the Teen Titans. I think if you liked the original Cartoon Network show back in the day, I think you would really enjoy this reboot. It's very fresh and more of a contemporary take, at least at this point, rather than the ultra stylized like the Teen Titans Tower of the Teen Titans TV show. But this is definitely like almost very character driven for a comic book series instead of action driven so far. At least the first 2 have very much been introducing the characters instead of any real bigger conflict. So I'm really excited to pick up the next book and see if more characters are introduced and more of like a big picture sort of conflict for the rest of the series. So the next series that is going to be on my list is The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter, and I read the first book this year. I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite start to the series, but just the way this is written, I have a feeling that this series is going to get better and better, because this was definitely very much like an introductory book. While there weren't as many dragons I was hoping, just based on the cover, and the main character was a little bit annoying. He makes some really bad decisions. The writing style of this book was so cool. I don't know how to describe it, but it is very unique. Evan Winter has a very unique voice, and it suits this world really, really well. So I'm very excited to continue on with the series, see some character development for Tao, and just kind of see the series grow. I'm very intrigued. Not a lot happened in this first book, just in terms of this is very much a book where our main character is getting his reasons for being involved in the later fight. So this follows a nation that is just very accustomed to war. Their whole entire culture is surrounded around war, surrounded around retaking this land, and just they've been in constant war with other civilizations around them. But this is very much, I've heard a lot of comparisons to Game of Thrones, which I'm not really seeing, and I do think that leads into the disappointment of people hearing that, seeing this cover, and then there not being as many dragons. But I have been seeing a lot of people saying this was a high fantasy gladiator. I absolutely agree with that. I read this, I totally agree with that. This, however, the first book very much deals with like the first couple of minutes almost of Gladiator. So if that Gladiator comparison is right, I am expecting this series to get a little bit more hopeful as time goes on, because this was very dark and very sad. But I will say, just in terms of Game of Thrones, the main character Tao, his kind of journey and his motivations in this book are very much like, I don't want to say this without giving spoilers, so maybe spoilers if you really want to go into this like blind, but his motivations and his journey and his quests really remind me a lot of Arya Stark's motivations and journeys and quests. Like his primary motivation for wanting to enact justice is very similar to hers. So I guess we can use Game of Thrones if we want. So a little bit of Game of Thrones plus a Gladiator in a high fantasy African inspired setting. So this is a really intriguing book that I'm excited about continuing. The next book, The Fires of Vengeance, actually came out this year in November of 2020. I just know I'm not going to be able to pick it up before the end of this year, so it's going on my 2021 TBR. And then actually there are 2 more books that Goodreads shows in this series already. The third book doesn't come out till January of 2022, so I might actually push The Fires of Vengeance a little bit further back so I can read it closer to the third one coming out. And then it says there will be a 4th one as well. There's not a release date for that or anything. There's not a cover for the 3rd one either. So just by Goodreads, I'd guess this is a quartet, so I am really looking forward to continuing. The 2nd cover makes it feel like there's going to be more dragon content, and there was dragon content, just not as much as I was expecting. So hopefully the series just continues to get better. And now the next 2 books, these ones are the ones that I'm like most unsure about, just in terms of I don't know if I will be able to continue with them in 2021 just based on when the next books release. For example, I plan on continuing with the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. The 2nd book is supposed to come out November 2nd of 2021. So theoretically, I would like to continue this series in 2021 and be able to pick that book up in November. There's not a lot of information on it, and if I am correct in thinking that date has already been pushed back from its original, so I don't know if it'll still come out in 2021, but here's hoping. And there is already a 3rd book slated for 2022. I don't know if this is going to be a trilogy or something longer. My guess, since it is Sarah J. Maas, it might be a little bit longer than a trilogy. I'm hoping to continue this series in 2021. We'll just see if that next book comes out or not. And this book gets a lot of hype, so I don't want to get too much into a synopsis because I feel like most people already know. This is like a really interesting mix between an urban fantasy and a regular high fantasy, but the fantasy elements are very modernized, whereas it's not like a Tolkien style fantasy where it's Middle Ages. It's our time period, but a fantasy world with a bunch of different species of characters like vampires, werewolves, merpeople, witches, wizards, angels, demons, all of that. So this was really fun. I really enjoyed this book. We'll see if I'll be able to continue with it in 2021. Let me tell you, I keep saying 2021 and it doesn't sound like a year. That's crazy that that's next year already. And then the final book that I have on this list I've added because of wishful thinking, because I honestly thought I was going to be able to continue on with the series this year, and then the sequel got pushed back, and I think it keeps getting pushed back, which is unfortunate, but I'm just putting it into the universe that I'll be able to continue on with the series next year, and that's going to be Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first in the Alex Stern series. Unsure of whether or not this will be a trilogy or a series or what have you next, but this is a dark fantastical academia book about a young woman named Alex Stern who has always had these supernatural powers and is not really going anywhere with her life. She's had a really tough life. A lot of terrible, tragic things have happened to her, but one day her whole life gets turned on its head when the dean of Yale reaches out to her and says that they need her area of expertise to help manage some secret societies at Yale. So she gets brought into Yale, a college where she never imagined being able to go to, and she goes there on the condition that she joins a secret society, and her secret society helps manage all the other secret societies in Yale, and all these secret societies do magic. It's so cool, so dark. I absolutely love this book. It was one of my favorite books of last year, and I had originally thought the sequel was coming out this year, and then it got moved to 2021, and then now when I'm looking it up on Goodreads, the sequel's still untitled, and now there's not even a release date. So will I be able to continue on with the series next year? Probably not, just judging on the fact that I really don't think that the next book will be published next year, but fingers crossed. Like, this is me just shouting it out into the universe. Like, maybe I'll talk about it and then, you know, Goodreads will hear me and, you know, add a release date. All I'm asking for is a release date, because I wanted to reread this year, but I'm waiting until the sequel release date gets announced so I can read it closer to when the sequel comes out. So here's hoping, guys. Here's hoping. Leave a comment down below if you know what's going on with this book, because I definitely feel like this one was one that had a definite release date at some point in time, and now it's just up in the air. So definitely let me know if you know anything about it. But that is going to be the end of this video. I am sure that there are some other series that I've started and plan on continuing that I've just forgotten about because I am just in the middle of so many things right now. I feel like that's part of the both pros and cons of being a fantasy reader, is that a ton of fantasy books are large series. So while the good news is you always have books on your TBR and you always have something next to pick up, it can get very confusing and very hard if you are in the middle of a lot of fantasy series at the same time. So those are all the series that I am prioritizing, continuing, and keeping up with in 2021. Definitely leave a comment down below letting me know the series that you're planning on continuing in 2021. Also, I'm planning on making a video for a series that I want to start in 2021. So if you have a series that I haven't mentioned here, definitely leave them down below, because I am really looking forward to, I know I'm in the middle of a lot of series right now, but picking up some new series next year as well. But that is going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content from me. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll see y'all on the other side. Bye!